Welcome to this foundational learning module. I'm Matt Dewar, and I'm excited to talk to you about self-awareness and self-regulation through mindful breathing. This is a topic I'm so passionate about, and I only have 20 minutes to talk about it, and it's torture because I could talk for days about this. I always say to people, I can talk about breathing far longer than anyone wants to listen. So let's get to it. I'm very excited to talk to you about this. The objectives: one, define self-awareness and its impact. Its importance in MBSEL, define self-regulation, learn to use breathing as a vehicle for self-awareness and self-regulation, and then use breathing as an opportunity for social connection and co-regulation, especially in the classroom, but even at home, if you want to try some of these techniques. All right, self-awareness. What is self-awareness? Self-awareness is the foundation of social and emotional intelligence, and it's foundational to SEL. Why? Because awareness is the precondition for all positive growth and change. You cannot change things. You cannot grow, adapt, and evolve if you don't first have awareness. And so if you struggle with self-awareness, the research shows you will struggle with all the other competencies of SEL. If you are strong in self-awareness, you will likely succeed in all the other competencies. So self-awareness is so critical. It's like, again, the age-old analogy or metaphor. It's like trying to build a house without a foundation. Self-awareness is the foundation of SEL. And so if you're gonna commit and prioritize resources, do it to the end of building self-awareness first in teachers, educators, first in leaders in the building, right? Because the person of influence always establishes the emotional climate and tone. So it starts with leaders, it goes to teachers, and then it goes to students. So really start with self-awareness work. And this is largely because just at the most basic level, our internal state, tension in the body, is what drives behavior and decision making. And so if you're not aware of the information that your body's providing in real time about your level of emotional stress, you're going to be behaving and making decisions reactively. It's like driving your car and never paying attention to the dashboard, never paying attention to the RPMs, how hard the engine's working, until your car engine goes up in smoke, and then you say to yourself, how did this happen? Right? This is what we do with our bodies all the time. We pay zero attention to the emotional dashboard, and we just keep driving, foot stuck on the gas. And so mindful breathing offers the opportunity to read invaluable information that your physiology is giving you moment to moment in real time about your total emotional status and stress level. Your breath is your first line of defense against stress. And so we can really start to build self-awareness in a core way by paying attention to breathing. Because it's as low as we can go in the architecture of our physiology where we can exert some influence. Right? What's so cool is that the diaphragm is both a muscle and an organ. And because it's a muscle, it's under conscious control. Could you imagine if you could control your heartbeat or the way your liver works or your kidneys, the way you can control your diaphragm? Right now I can say, hold your breath. And when you hold your breath, all you're doing is stabilizing your diaphragm. It's not moving. And then I say, breathe in, and you're forcing your diaphragm to collapse and pull down, reverse suction, air comes in, fills up your lungs. If I say exhale, you let go, diaphragm comes back up, pushes that air back out, it equilibrates back into the environment. Absolutely unbelievable. So we can develop this profound level of self-awareness by paying attention to our internal state via our breathing. Just some additional information. Lack of self-awareness, which is known as alexithymia or alexithymia, comes from the Greek. It means no words for emotions. It's a condition. This impedes social awareness or empathy. So the higher you score in alexithymia, the lower you'll score in social awareness and empathy. So at the heart of self-awareness is emotional self-awareness. What am I feeling in my body? And when people can't recognize or name or give words to what it is they're feeling in their bodies, they're going to be really bad at doing the same thing in other people and inferring what other people are experiencing and feeling. And that is the nature of empathy. So if we want students to be empathetic, we have to teach them how to be connected to their own physiology. And again, breathing is such a wonderful access point for this. So think of 3 doorways of self-awareness: the physical, the emotional, and the mental. I've created so many exercises out of these 3 categories for colleagues and for students, just talking about what's your body physically telling you about your internal state. List that out. Your chest, your heart rate, your stomach, your breathing, so on and so forth, right? And then your emotions. Your emotions are the meaning you assign the sensations of your body, right? So a fast heart rate can be anticipation and excitement for something good that's going to happen. Or a fast heart rate can be panic and dread and fear. The physical level, it's the same phenomenon, right? But at the emotional level, it can mean 2 different things. So it's really important to understand what are the emotions we're assigning the physical sensations, and then what are the thoughts that correspond with that, the storylines we use to perpetuate these internal states. And just to sum up this section, mindfulness is applied self-awareness because self-awareness is present moment awareness. So when we're practicing mindfulness, mindfulness of body, mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of emotion, mindfulness of thinking, we're really applying self-awareness. We're putting it into action and we're strengthening it. So just 3 quick principles of self-awareness. It's foundational. We tend not to be good at it, and it's highly trainable. That's the good news. It's highly trainable with practice. Okay, I got to hurry up. I'm already at 7.5 minutes. So breathing and respiration. Now let's talk about self-awareness via breathing. Breathing and respiration are not the same thing. Breathing is a behavior, which means it's learned, whereas respiration is chemical and it's reflexive. Now, breathing can be reflexive. Ideally, if we're healthy and self-regulating, breathing is reflexive. The problem is we unconsciously learn to take over our breathing. Why would we do that? Why would we learn to take over our breathing? Because it allows us to manipulate our emotional state. And that happens at the cost of physiological regulation, chemical regulation. We disrupt the chemical axis of respiration when we do that by offloading too much carbon dioxide. So I'm going to give you an example. How many times do you notice within yourself or within other people, when they're getting stressed out, they do this? That's a learned breathing behavior. That is not reflexive breathing. What you're doing there is you're dumping a bunch of carbon dioxide. Why are you learning to do that unconsciously? Why are you dumping carbon dioxide when you get stressed out? Because it anesthetizes you to the sensation of stress in your body. It makes you feel numb in your body. The lower your CO2 goes, the more disconnected from your body you feel. And in a moment of stress, that feels good. In some ways, it's no different than reaching for a drink of alcohol, right? It allows you to disassociate from your body and from your experience. Though it works in the moment, it comes at the cost of dysregulation over time, right? So when you drink alcohol to manage your stress, it works in the moment. It has a payoff in the moment. But the cost is on the back end. It's going to dysregulate you more over time and make you more susceptible to stress over time. Over-breathing, chronic behavioral hypocapnia is the same thing. When we're taking these deep breaths, when we're breathing too fast, too shallow, too often, we're dumping our CO2 and we're dysregulating ourselves. So it's very, very, very important to start building that awareness of how you've learned certain breathing behaviors to deal with stress. We can learn to breathe in ways that do not serve self-regulation. So important. And overbreathing is common and impacts our learning and well-being. I have a machine here. I'm a certified breathing behavior analyst under Dr. Peter Litchfield in his program. He invented this machine. It's called a Capno trainer. It comes with a cannula and a software program that you hook up to in your computer, and you can see your real-time waveforms of your breath in relation to respiratory chemistry. And one of the things that we do is in a session is lead someone into guided overbreathing, where you would deliberately have them overbreathe to bring on their symptoms. And once someone hits about 20 millimeters of mercury, they're in severe hypocapnia, and you keep them there for 2 to 4 minutes. And one of the things you can do, and I've done this in presentations with educators, is after they've been in that space of dysregulation for a couple minutes, I'll hand them a piece of paper or a book, and I'll say, read this paragraph aloud. And so they go and they read the paragraph, and then when they're done, I say, tell me what you just read. They have no idea what they just read. And they have no idea because for every millimeter of mercury drop in CO2 from overbreathing, it represents a 2 to 4% reduction of blood flow to the brain. Which means once you get low, once you become severely hypocapnic, your brain is offline. Your ability to learn, your memory recall, all of that, gone. Because your brain is in such a dysregulated state. There are people who I've worked with who have experienced just chronic stress, ongoing trauma, etc. And I'll hook them up to the machine. And their baseline breathing is at 20 or 19 or 18 millimeters of mercury. So they're just hanging out there always, whereas healthy is 35 millimeters of mercury. So a healthy, normal, self-regulating person will have that level going, right? And so when you bring them into overbreathing, you have to bring them down. But some people are always in that space because of chronic stress. They've learned to breathe and overbreathe and hold their breathing, right? And it brings on all these symptoms. And so if you're a student, think about your students who have experienced trauma or who are chronically stressed out, and they're walking into your classroom and they can't pay attention, and they're impulsive, and they can't learn anything, memorize anything, and you say, hey, you're a bad student. Well, of course they are, because they're likely overbreathing. This is why we can remedy this and prime the brains in the room to learn by taking 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning of class to have everyone be self-aware through their breathing. Slow their breathing down. Recognize any tension. Let it go. I'm rambling, but you get the idea. Deep breathing is not a solution. We always tell people to take deep breaths when they're stressed out. Again, it ultimately creates more dysregulation. And so learn to be with your breathing before you try to take over your breathing. And this is what we practice all the time in my classroom and in my school, is getting students to recognize unconscious behaviors where they take over their breathing, right? They force inhales, they hold their breath, they abort exhales before they come out. That's really common for people who are stressed out, is they can't let a full exhale go. It gets about 2/3 of the way out, and then they feel so uncomfortable because they're so used to low carbon dioxide that the moment it starts to build up a little bit, their chemoreceptors that register carbon dioxide tell them to breathe right away, like there's not enough room to breathe. These are people who have panic attacks, high anxiety, chronic stress, etc. And so learn to be with your breathing first. Just observe it. Build that self-awareness, right? Self-awareness is key to everything. And at the base of self-awareness, the core ingredient of self-awareness is an awareness of your physiology. And so your breathing gives you access to this. So powerful. So unbelievably powerful. So now we're talking about self-regulation, the ability to skillfully respond to your internal state, physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Um, Essential question: is my response to stress an unconscious reaction or a conscious skill? And it's really important to recognize that our worst habits are unskillful attempts to self-regulate. Let me say that again, because that's huge. Our worst habits are unskillful and unconscious, usually, attempts to self-regulate. And we've normed as a culture so many behaviors that are physiologically, emotionally, and psychologically disruptive. But we've normed them as being okay, ways to self-regulate. Caffeine, alcohol, prescription medications, depressants because we get so anxious, so on and so forth. It's also really important to recognize that distraction is not relaxation, nor is it regulation, but can be a bridge. Distraction is not relaxation. We think that by getting on our phones and scrolling through social media, or putting our brains into neutral by binge watching Netflix, that somehow we're relaxing. No, we're not. You're still in a heightened state of arousal physiologically. You're still stressing your system out. But distraction can be a bridge. Some people can't just go from high activity to restorative activity. They need something in between. And so distraction for a specified period of time can do that. So maybe you come home and you say, I'm going to watch my show for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to go practice my mindful breathing. Okay, fine. That's a bridge, right? Distraction is a bridge, is a transition space. But it's not an end in itself. And so breathing and self-awareness. Read your breathing like the dashboard of your emotional engine. Assess your arousal levels. We do this at the beginning of every class in my classes. On a scale of 1 to 10, based on bodily tension and breathing behavior, what is your state? 10, super high arousal. 1, super low arousal. 5, the perfect balance between alertness and calm. Where are you right now? Student says, I'm at an 8. I say, how do you know you're at an 8? And they say, okay, well, it's because my chest, and I can't let go of my exhale, and I notice that I'm reaching for air on my inhales, and I have tightness in my jaw. My students will talk like this. By the end of first quarter, they will have an advanced vocabulary and a very detailed description of their physical state as they assign it. It's not like that the first week or the second week. Again, it's something you train and build. But you teach them that it's just like a dashboard of a car. How hard's your engine working? Are you redlining? And so practice 1, read your emotional dashboard on a scale of 1 to 10. What does your breathing tell you about your internal state right now? I'm not going to talk about the CO2 tolerance test because I don't have enough time. So breathing then and self-regulation. If breathing is like the dashboard of your self-awareness, of your car, of your engine, your emotional engine, then breathing is also like the gear shifter. So that when you recognize your RPMs are too high, your emotional RPMs are too high or too low, all you need to do is shift and shift yourself into a calmer and better state. So use your breathing to shift emotional gears. Breathing is stress prevention and stress intervention, meaning that you can use breathing to bolster your physiology in general so that when you do experience stress, you've got more gas in the tank, so to speak, so you'll be more resilient and not running on empty. And then you can also use breathing when you're in the thick of stress, right? You want to do your best to stay ahead of stress by preventing it. But sometimes, right, life is life, and you can't prevent it, and you're in the midst of it. Well, you can still use breathing in the midst of it as well. Just simply recognizing how you're starting to take over your breathing. You're becoming rigid in your breathing. Let that go. Allow reflexive breathing to happen. So practice. Identify and assess how different breathing protocols impact your internal state. And then breathing and co-regulation. Neuroception is a term that Stephen Porges has used, and the interbrain is a term Stuart Shankar has used. And basically, it's just our ability to read the nervous system of other people. And when we get dialed into our own breathing, we start to pick up on other people's breathing. And we start to infer and be able to read the internal state of other people because how we see them breathing. right? So it's a very beautiful thing. So that self-awareness that breathing gives us becomes social awareness as well. How you are is more influential than what you say. When you show up into class with your students and you're not self-aware, you're not paying attention to your breathing, you're not paying attention to the expressivity of your face, the intonation of your voice, your mannerisms physically, right? Then that's a missed moment, because every kid in the room is picking up to that, not just the content of what you're teaching or saying. How you are is super influential. So you teach with who and how you are, not just with what you say. The best way to regulate is to regulate together. And I find that the best way to do this is to create rituals of co-regulation via mindful breathing, to start class breathing together. And this is so embedded within us as human beings, is that from the time we're infants, our nervous system is regulated by co-breathing with the caretaker, that we mimic their breathing behavior, that our heart rate matches their heart rate. So we have this ability, neuroception, right, all the time, where we're attuning our nervous system with other people. And so if you're a teacher, you're the person of influence. Everyone in your class is attuning their nervous system to you. So if you lead the class in mindful breathing at the beginning of every class, you have the ability to use your breathing, your nervous system, to co-regulate everyone around you. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's a dose-response relationship. The more you practice, the more results you get. So resources, my book, The Mindful Breathing Workbook for Teens, gets into this all in depth. If you want to check it out on Amazon or on New Harbinger's website. That's my publisher. There's a great book, Breathe by James Nestor, if you want to take a deeper dive into the science of breathing. And then the book Self-Reg by Stuart Shankar. All right, I'm 2 minutes over. Thank you very much. Take care. Hope this was a great module.